Funded Today Nation, welcome back to the Funded Today podcast. On today's episode, we're taking a deeper dive into our presentation P. Have you ever wondered how to design the perfect page? Do you want to know the best way to structure your rewards for your campaign? Want to know the perfect number of rewards you should offer? If so, this masterclass is for you.
The Funded Today podcast is hosted by world-renowned entrepreneurs and business experts Thomas Alvord and Zach Smith. To get help with your next big business idea or to take your business to the next level, go to fundedtoday.com.
Welcome back. I am Zach Smith.
And I'm Thomas Alvord.
And in our last episode, we talked about the 7 Ps for crowdfunding success. That episode is a must listen to if you want to check off all the elements necessary for a successful crowdfunding campaign. Go check it out. Go listen to it. You're going to love it. In today's episode, we're going to hit on our presentation P a little bit harder. We got a very special guest, our very own director of page design here at Funded Today, Mr. Luke Morris. Luke, how are you doing today?
Fantastic, Zach. Thanks for asking. And hello, Thomas.
Luke, how are you?
So glad to have you. A little bit of background on Luke. You're going to see how much of a genius this guy is as we get talking to him. But Luke, in just the last year, has worked on 95 Kickstarter campaigns, overseeing just over $1.4 million in funding and counting. A lot of those are still funding, so that number is rising every second. Luke, anything you've learned that you want to share with creators to help them be more successful?
Nope. But I'm positive I know the formula for an unsuccessful page.
Well, let's start there. I think that's great. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, especially after designing dozens of watch pages, I think that you can pull up just about any watch page on Kickstarter right now who hasn't met their funding, and you'll see this exact formula. First, you'll start by claiming you've discovered a new lifestyle. Please avoid discussing product specs or really any concrete information. Go on to continue and tell everybody what a visionary you are, and do this in 1,000 words or less. Load up several 50-megabyte animated GIFs to capture their interest. Go ahead and take the structure from the top third of $1 million campaign and just paste that on top of whatever you had up to this point. You'll know it'll convert now. Double check to make your profile picture is really large. Make sure you post your profile picture several times throughout the page and write the big kahuna right under the photo. They love that. It adds lots of credibility. Now you can mention the rewards, the pricing, and your plan to just deliver this to backers in a timely manner. Just make sure you skim over these points as quickly as possible and place it at the very end of the page. And then remind everybody that you're going to change the world together.
You mentioned those 8 points, how to be unsuccessful at a Kickstarter campaign. You do see that a lot because so many people have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And then you see people thinking they can make up something that doesn't have the right story, that doesn't have the right motivation behind it. And they're trying to emulate success, but their emulation is not real. It's not genuine. And I think a lot of these points you touch on hit on that quite a bit.
Going along with what you just said, Zach, about campaigns that just copy another campaign, imitating success is always good. But a lot of times people, I've noticed as well, they will just copy something and they think they're imitating success, but they have it all backwards. I remember a couple years ago, there was a campaign, it was a jacket, and they were imitating the Bowback's travel jacket. They said, look, each of the different features we have, we show here's the feature and here's why it's awesome. And we kind of break it down. They literally thought they were copying the structure of Bowback's. But once you looked at it, it's like, well, it looked like you were copying it, but the structure was still different because Bowback's would always talk about the benefit. You get this benefit with this feature and this benefit with this feature. But this other campaign literally was saying, hey, here's this feature and here's this feature. And they didn't understand the difference between a feature and a benefit. Copying success can be good and can be useful, but you have to know what you're doing. So what Luke said, you can't just go look at the $1 million campaigns and copy it because you still need to know the nuances of what they did to really imitate that success if that's what you're going to do.
People detest marketees. And a lot of studies, time and time again, we've seen that inflated language, non-scannable structures, just repel people like some sort of skunk. As soon as you start typing in anything that looks like a marketing, and you use acronyms and you say that our thing is the greatest thing under the sun and everyone shall unite under us, especially the younger generation, they turn away from that immediately. They look at it and they go, this is going to be a huge hassle to get any information that I want. Most of these really fantastic campaigns, they drive a lot of traffic, and sometimes they're not making an amazing profit and they're not converting as well as they like. So we see these campaigns and we say, oh, they made $3 million, $5 million. They made so much money. And then you start looking at the background and you see these people aren't turning a huge profit, and they're not as efficient as some of the campaigns that are making $100,000, $200,000. And their cost for conversion reflects that too. It's sometimes really high. So just looking at a campaign because it's Exploding Kittens or because it's Filippo Loretti, that doesn't guarantee your success, frankly, is going to hinder you in almost every circumstance.
It's funny you mentioned that. We talked about that on another podcast episode. An example that came to mind recently was Blue Smart, the huge Indiegogo smart luggage campaign. They have actually declared bankruptcy now, even though they raised millions of dollars on the platform. Thomas and I talk about this all the time. Just because a campaign posts $1 million or $2 million or $10 million or $20 million. I mean, look at the Coolest Cooler for an example of somebody who raised a ton of money and still hasn't been able to find a way to deliver to all of the backers and is in a lot of financial trouble. So the big number you post doesn't mean as much as you might think it means.
Sure. We all want to raise, $5 million. We get a lot of people, sharing, okay, well, let's do it like the Coolest Cooler. Are you aware of the repercussions of what happened there? So just scanning for the most funded campaigns is instinctively going to be a bad move in almost every scenario.
Yeah, absolutely agree there. I kind of want to transition now to another topic and kind of get right into the meat of what you do. Let's talk about some design myths on Kickstarter. And again, when we say Kickstarter, we're talking about any crowdfunding platform, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, perhaps even non-rewards-based crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe, where you're trying to raise money for a charitable cause or something that you believe in. But Kickstarter design myths, let's talk about them. I know you've got a couple that you wanted to hit on there. Tell me a little bit about some of the design myths that you've seen as you've designed all of these pages and structured all of these stories and rewards.
Sure. So I'd like to talk about 3 today that I see fairly consistently in my experience. One, we just went over this. If it worked for $1 million campaign, it'll work for you. That's never the case. Their business agenda is different. The social conventions on Kickstarter are going to be different than yours. Many $1 million campaigns have been launched by reputable brands and creators who target people. And then they already have a Kickstarter account, and they've probably already backed these people. One that comes to mind is the Nomadic Backpack. They release something once every 3 months. And I get a lot of clients saying, we want to look like Nomadic. We want to look like Nomadic. Well, they've had the same exact design that's almost been unchanging since they launched. You can see the price, the amount that they're getting is going up and down. They're not doing this based on any sort of objective fact. They're just doing it because the first time they did it worked, and they're going to continue doing it. They're not testing that design.
And I like that too, Luke, regarding social conventions. I think there's something to be said about that as it relates to, let's look at smart luggage. If I have some really nice luggage, I have some Toomey luggage and I love it and I take it with me everywhere. I don't think I'm ever going to need luggage. I mean, maybe in 10 years, 20 years. And so if I've purchased, let's say I purchased Toomey luggage on a Kickstarter campaign, and if you go and say, oh, well, I want a Toomey campaign, it raised $5 million. You're probably not going to raise $5 million because if you're targeting me, I've already got luggage. And I think the same thing is the case for a wallet. Or what else is kind of a big on Kickstarter occasionally? I mean, if I get the Coolest Cooler, I'm not going to need another cooler. So you're not going to be able to. There's examples like that you have to consider as well. If we have all of these people that we can target and then they purchase something, think about the life cycle purchase of that product. I mean, maybe a watch, you'd want 5 or 6 watches if you're a watch type guy. So that's an example of something. But if you have a wallet until it rips or wears out, or you want to try something new, you're not going to need another wallet. And so a lot of people look at a campaign on Kickstarter that was very successful and they say, do this one for me, and target the same people that backed that one. And I think the targeting part is what you have to be careful with, because if you're targeting those same people, they might not actually be purchasing because they already purchased your competitor's product.
That's such a great point. Yeah. And that comes down to, how pre-sold are these customers before they even enter the site? Are they interested in any luggage? And then for Toomey, when you bought the Toomey luggage, first of all, you mentioned Toomey. I've seen Toomey at the airport just with the Toomey name. I know I'm going to get some good luggage.
Mm-hmm.
So if Toomey were to make a Kickstarter campaign, they wouldn't have to start by building all this credibility and saying, oh, we've been featured in Forbes in here. They're Toomey. They can skip that entire part.
I want to talk about that so much. We see this. I mean, you probably see this even more than I do now, Luke, but there are a lot of Funded Today clients that say, I don't want to hurt my brand, or I've got this brand. You do not have a brand.
Exactly.
I don't care who you are. Like, maybe the Bowback's travel jacket is a brand now.
Maybe.
He's raised 12 or 15 million and then another 10, 20 million on his website over the last 4 or 5 years. Maybe that's a brand.
Maybe.
Like, you don't have a brand with your watch or your wallet or your new idea. And don't think we're being mean here. It's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah, the idea of brand, I think, is silly, because I'll share something from Neil Patel. He had an article a little while ago that I was reading. He said, the most important factor for SEO that's going to drive traffic to your website, you know what it is? And he said, it's not your keywords, it's not this, it's not your inbound links. He said, you know what it is? And then he shared an example. He said, I asked my friend, when you go buy shoes, what brand do you buy? He said, Nike. Okay. And he asked a few other products. Where do you go? What do you do? And he listed all those things. He said, that's the power of branding. And that's why people will go to Nike.com or Starbucks or wherever else, because of the strong brand. People don't have that. And when somebody's trying to do a startup right here on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, you're not trying to, I guess in a way you're building your brand, but that's not the goal. The goal is to drive traffic and to drive sales. Here's the grand irony of all of this. This isn't so much about how do you design your crowdfunding page, but it has a parallel, which is this. Often we'll create ads for these clients of ours, and they'll be mad at us. They'll say, this looks horrible. This isn't my brand. I gave you the images to use for the ads. This looks like crap. And we say, okay, we'll test it. And then we test it. It's like, well, we told you. It's not going to get a good engagement. Because guess what happens? When you run a polished image inside of Facebook, people have the glasses on, so they just ignore ads. And if they see something that's glossy and beautiful, they'll just look right over it and they'll ignore it. Right? But something that looks homegrown, that looks organic, that looks natural, that looks like somebody took it from their iPhone, that's not super amazing, that's what's actually going to do well.
Ready for a maxim here? It is the job of your ad to incite, evoke curiosity in the prospective backer, somebody who's going to click from Facebook, to click onto your ad. They click on your ad, then it is the job of the page design, the reward structure, the video, the ad copy, the story, to convince that curious clicker to become part of your tribe, to back your campaign. It is the job of the ad to create curiosity. It is the job of the page and video and story and reward structure to convert.
I'm not saying your campaign page where people will make a contribution or a pledge, that it needs to look crummy. But just for kicks and giggles, for those of you out there, go look at Pebble Watch, the very first Pebble Watch campaign, and you'll see that his video was not good at all. Like literally he shot it with his own camera. It looks horrible, but it didn't matter because the value proposition and what he was doing was far more substantial than any design elements, which is kind of ironic for me to be saying here because we're talking about how to design a good Kickstarter page. You do still need to have a good design. The design can get in the way.
Let's unpack that. You say that designing a good Kickstarter page doesn't include value proposition. I would argue that we often see that as the visual or the layout, which I think you're referring to. But remember that we not only as designers design the visuals, but we also design the words. A lot of design, people don't really see that, is really around the value proposition. Bad design, I would say, is only around the visuals, and a lot of designers get caught up on that.
And Luke, I think that's what makes you so unique, and everybody at Funded Today is sometimes we think designer, it's plopping images on pages, making it look pretty and glossy, but at Funded Today, our designers design pages that convert,
Absolutely.
that sell, than copy. In addition to creating beautiful pages, it will make your brand proud. We'll throw it out there. If you want to call yourself a brand, you're going to be proud of the pages that are designed.
I love what Thomas said, and I couldn't agree more. As a brand identity designer of 10 years, I think this is one of the biggest problems that I come across. And this is a lot of the reasons that I've stopped doing branding for startups is because their brand doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. Here's the counter argument that they'll present to you if you say, oh, your brand doesn't matter. They're like, you're not thinking long term, right? It's just short term for you to think. Okay, what they don't realize is for them to have a brand, which means you own something in the customer's head, so Bowbacks, they might own the idea of like a jacket that has a million features in it. They might own that, right? It takes 20, 30 years, tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars to drill that little thing like Nike, just do it.
I love that, Luke, owning space inside the customer's head. Think about Geico. They can throw millions of dollars at every single TV station in the world to say 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on your car insurance, right? They've been doing that forever and they're just throwing it out there. And when you think of insurance, Geico probably readily comes to mind in the top 3 to 5 choices. If you can't do that, you don't have a brand.
Exactly. What we've shifted to say is that the people that are launching on Kickstarter, by nature of being on Kickstarter, they're not a brand. So what they're doing is they're crafting an identity. And that's true. They have an identity. Now, the argument is, does your identity matter at this stage? Does anybody care? The answer is, frankly, as long as you look credible, trustworthy, and the information you're providing is concise and scannable, no, it doesn't matter at all. It just needs to be legible. And then don't put yourself in a place where you're saying no to all these options and you've already figured out the perception in your consumer's head of what you are. This is silly. It's like having a baby and then deciding everything that baby's going to be, including its job and where it's going to live the minute you have it.
And I love that, Luke. You mentioned Nomadic earlier, and Nomadic actually is a great example of that. They transitioned from a wallet company. They started a company you might not know about it called Basics, BASICS, Basics Wallet. And together with Funded Today, they raised over $171,000 for their first campaign. For some reason along the way, they decided they wanted to be more of a lifestyle brand, and they transitioned to Nomadic. They didn't know what they were going to be.
Well, at first they did a wallet, and then they did a watch, and then they did a planner, and then they did a bag. And they actually, before that, also partnered with someone else they were doing some stuff with and did a standing desk. And so they were kind of exploring, trying to figure out what they were doing. A lot of startups, what they eventually become, they did not intend to start out doing that. Very often it changes. So I like what you're saying, Luke. How can you say, here's what our brand is if you don't even know where you're going, right? Because when you're initially coming into a market, you don't know how the market's going to respond, and you're going to need to pivot and you're going to need to change. And that's going to change who you are, what your identity is, and eventually, if you grow big enough, what your brand is. I used to tell people at Funded Today, when I worked more closely with the creative, now I'm, more in other areas, but I used to tell our team, look, I would rather, and what we need is good copywriting. And then the visuals and the stuff, that's kind of just gravy, right? But you need the good copy. You need to get into their emotions. You need to get to the value proposition. That is what matters the most.
Think about Lunaware, one of my favorite examples still. I use it so much when I speak around the world. 71-year-old watchmaker passes on legacy of watchmaking to grandchildren. Read all about it, right? That ad did not even feature the watch, and it had some of the highest conversion rates and click-throughs that we've ever seen. Luke, we talked about timing. Can you hit on that a little bit stronger now?
Yeah, to go back. So if it's working for $1 million campaign, it'll work for you. That's a myth. And the biggest one that I see that people are just looking over is the timing. They look at these campaigns that have already been funded. Okay, so by nature of looking at a campaign that's already been funded and then copying it, you're looking at the campaign on its 30th day. I can tell you for every single campaign that I've laid my hands on, we do not leave that campaign untouched after day one. We're making lots of minor and lots of major edits. So you have no idea what their launch strategy was. All you know is what their ending strategy was. And usually these campaigns are seeing some sort of pivot or plateau towards the end, and they're trying to pivot and do something different. So they've They might have started with a 5-minute video and tried several different videos in the slot. They might have not had any social proof at all in the beginning. And then they might have added it towards the end. And you don't know if that helped them or not. You don't know if this was the A or the B. And a lot of the best brands, the ones that you're copying, of course they're changing stuff and testing it.
Actively managed page design. And I know we do that, but hearing you say that makes me so happy, because I think a lot of people think, I got my page, I got my video, I'm done, let's launch. Here we go, 30 days, 60 days. That's not the case at all. Throughout the campaign, you're making pivots and tweaks and edits. I mean, we didn't originally intend to talk about this, but I know you're a data head, kind of like me, kind of like Thomas. Tell me a little bit about a couple of the metrics you're looking at and measuring. And I know this is recent, but what are some of the points that you like to look at to determine conversion rates and to determine what's making a campaign resonate with prospective backers, Luke?
Sure. So one of my favorite ones is simply page load. Without exception, if the page load is over 3 to 5 seconds here in America, and New York specifically, that means you're done after 5 seconds outside of America, because you're looking at a 20-second load in China, a 30-second load in Australia, a 40-second load over in Russia. You're leaving out most of China just with that 5-second page load, which, by the way, all that takes, 5 seconds of page load, that's 5 to 10 megabytes on your page. And that looks like a normal sized page, and then 3 GIFs that are 5 seconds long. And you've pretty much cut out half the population in terms of how long they're willing to wait to look at your page.
That's a very strong point to look at. And when Luke talks about page load, he's talking about when somebody clicks a link to go to your Kickstarter page, how long is it taking for that page to appear in the browser window? What is 1 or 2 techniques you do to get the page load speed at the speed it needs to be at to still resonate? It makes sense, right? Somebody's clicking on an ad, and if they've clicked on that ad because they're curious, and suddenly it's 5 seconds or longer, well, then they forgot why they were curious to click, and they're gone.
Yep, they're gone. The biggest issue that I see with campaigns is that they think that they need to add GIFs to create interest, and more GIFs equals more interest. That may be true. Animations are really, really great for capturing interest. They move around. I would limit it to, through the whole page, less than 3 seconds of GIFs. To be completely safe, you get 3 to 5 seconds of GIFs. So maybe that's 5 1-second GIFs or 1 5-second GIF. I wouldn't recommend going anything over that, or else you should be testing your page and optimizing those GIFs.
Any tool you using for page load speed testing? Or is there any free tool or something that you like to use or plug it into to test the page load speed?
Pingdom.com. That's the website speed test. And we check in usually 3 different countries. We'll check in New York. We'll check in Stockholm, Sweden, Melbourne, Australia, and usually San Jose, California.
And that's Pingdom?
Yes, pingdom.com.
Pingdom.com. Pingdom.com. Cool. Very cool. Last Kickstarter design myth, they messed up. Explain that one to me.
If everything else, is good, and let's say that somehow you're looking at this page and you're aware of which one is the A and which one is the B in the split test, and you're aware of their business agenda and their traffic sources and their market, there's still a chance that they simply messed up. Even Amazon messes up sometimes. There was an e-commerce study done within the last year where Amazon's mobile site was still suffering from things like unclear primary buttons and product pages that were hard to find. And they've recently gone through a small redesign, and even Amazon is improving things every day. To go to Amazon or even Google or any of these top Kickstarter projects and just copy them directly, realize these people are also messing up, and they're constantly learning from those mess ups too. You're likely going to be copying that mess up.
Test everything. I mean, that's the takeaway there. I love that. I see this so much on Kickstarter with a lot of the clients that we work with at Funded Today. Some people think that because they feel that way, everybody else is going to feel that way. They think they are the backer for their product. And in some cases they might be, but I'd say more often than not, they've actually kind of got an identity crisis going on there. Talk to me about that a little bit, Luke, and let's run through some of your points there.
Sure. Empathy is really hard. For a lot of people, I've found it's just difficult to imagine a world that's not your own. And especially, when you're in a position of power, often people find themselves in the position where now they're designing something for a user or creating something for their customer, and they continue that behavior. And that's one of the quickest ways to ruin your Kickstarter campaign, is to make a campaign for yourself. Now, sometimes that can work if you're dealing with a tiny niche. I worked with a guy who sold monster trucks or racing trucks. And there was a group of like 14 people that drove racing trucks. And he made the argument that he personally knows everyone in this category, and they're all like him because there's 14 other people. And I admit that's true. So if you're going after a niche where you can pretty much talk to everybody and meet them, then I suppose you can assume everybody is somewhat like you. If you're dealing with a market more than 100 people, you're going to have a strong bias that leads in an inefficient design.
Now, Funded Today Nation, here's a takeaway on this point. Triple F. Use your friends, family, fool network. They can give you the answers you need before you launch. As they review your page design, as they look at your reward structure, they're going to give you the feedback that you're not going to identify with yourself. Leverage that. We have a whole episode on the Triple F. Listen to it. That'll help you get into the minds of people that are actually going to back your product and what resonates with them rather than what you think is going to resonate.
And I really want to hammer down this point that you are not the user. First of all, just let's get away from the idea that, you're even in charge of a page. By nature of you listening to this podcast and hearing what I'm saying, and especially by nature of putting something on Kickstarter, you, sir, are in the top 3% of computer literacy in the United States. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in the top 8%, or you're at what we call a level 3. You have the highest computer literacy you can measure. Only 8% of the people in the United States. We generally create page around a level 1 literacy. That's really interesting because some of the things that, level 1 people need to do, which is going to be a huge section of your market, is you'll find pretty much no navigation should be required to access the information.
It's kind of like how most self-help books are written at the reading level of a fifth grader.
A metaphor that I've heard used for this, and this might be slightly inappropriate, but it's incredibly apt, is they say pretend the user's like drunk and like you're walking them back from a bar. You have to say, okay, we're gonna walk out of the bar here, put your arm around my shoulder. We're gonna take these 10 steps, very simple. Okay, I'm going to open the door. We're going to take you home now. That's kind of the mindset that you need to be in. And when people say, okay, make this like you're talking to your friend. Make this like you're talking to your friend that you're taking home after a long night.
You're talking about conversion. We're talking about conversion. And the job of the page is to convert. Notice all these elements. I mean, listeners, pay attention here. We're talking about helping anybody who visits your page to convert. Convert means to back your product, to get excited, to become part of your tribe. That's the job of the page. And I love that analogy.
And not to prove that you're smart or that you know a lot or that you're in charge. It's to convert, which means generally to communicate what's in it for me. How much hassle is this information going to get? And so right away, you have to tell them, this isn't going to be a hassle. There's a lot in it for you at the end. And then you tell them right away what's in it for them, or they're going to leave.
And you know why this is important? Luke, you and I have the same experience. I go to the bank. I go to the grocery store. I'm a talkative person. I'm maybe an introvert, but when I'm out, I'm kind of extroverted. Ask your Lyft driver. Ask your Uber driver. Ask your barber. Ask your banker about Kickstarter. Have you ever heard of Kickstarter before? What's the response, Luke?
Usually a long pause and followed by something like, is that a website? Once, yesterday, I actually did this and I had a Lyft driver. He said, Kickstart. Isn't that a soft drink made kind of like Mountain Dew?
Yeah. Hey, there's the brand element again. Look at Mountain Dew. Look at Mountain Dew reaching out with their brand. It's so true. You are dealing with a group of people who are going to give you money with the hope that one day in 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year or more, that they will receive the product that they have given you a couple $100 for.
I think that's overly optimistic, Zach. I think most people think they're just making a purchase. They don't even realize they're backing it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. So on your end, again, putting yourself you're so right, Thomas, on your end, putting yourself in the mind of the customer, they think they're getting this on Amazon Prime and 2 days later they're getting their product. Mm-hmm. That's optimistic. But what's really happening is they are backing a product that they may or may not ever receive that they've given up a couple $100 for. And more people are learning about that than ever before, but they're still like, hey, when am I going to get my product? I backed this. Why hasn't it shipped yet? So that's the type of person you're designing this page for.
Yes.
How do you resonate with them? How do you communicate these nuances with that particular profile?
Let me share one other thing, Zach. The stuff that Luke is sharing and that we've been talking about also does not apply simply to crowdfunding. It applies even if you have your own company website. I was working with a client recently. They were upset that I kept suggesting they needed to modify their webpage. Above the top fold, they had a slider and it would literally have like one sentence. It wasn't even a sentence. It was like a clause kind of saying what the product was. And I was like, this is really bad. You have to sit here for about 15 seconds to read the equivalent of 2 sentences to figure out what the product is, right? Like this substantially needs to change. And at first they were mad at me and they're like, hey, we didn't hire you to criticize our webpage. We hired you to run marketing. And I said, fine.
They did what Luke talks about. They think that they know their customer. They think they are their customer. They're talking about how cool and great they are instead of how to resonate with the person that actually wants to purchase their product.
Well, it's not only about the customer and their client, but also about the process. And so I had to explain, look, the goal of the ad is to take somebody away from whatever webpage they're currently reading, or if they're browsing on Facebook, is to get them off of that page and then to get them to your website and then to let the website do the selling and the persuasion and the convincing to get them to open their wallet and to purchase or to back your product, right? Because that's the process when you're doing direct response marketing, right? We're not doing branding here. You're a startup. You're trying to generate sales. And so the goal is to generate those sales as effectively as possible. And the goal is not to run some branding campaign where you have one user who sees your ad 10 times. Yeah, if you're a car manufacturer, the sales cycle might be a year or two. It's a $50,000 purchase. Then yeah, you might do that. But not if you're selling a $100, $200 product and you're a startup, right? The approach is going to be substantially different. So you need to remember that whether you're on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or on your own website. So
by nature of being on Kickstarter and putting a product out there, your goal is probably to make money. But your users have different goals. They always just want to get things done. You have to be constantly, it's okay that your goal is to make money, but you have to be aware that your users are just trying to get something done, and you can't let your goal of making money get in the way of the information they're trying to get so they can get their tasks done. Usually, we enter in a lot of complexity there. For a big picture conclusion, what you need to realize is that if your page is too complex, you're down to serving 31% of the population of the United States, 35% in Japan, 37% in Canada and Singapore, 38% in Northern Europe and Australia. This is according to Nielsen Norman Group, I think in 2006. So you need to keep it extremely simple, or 2/3 of the population cannot use your design.
And ready for another insider tip on that point? We're in a global market now. Kind of common sense, but on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, more and more pledges are coming internationally than ever before. And if you're not resonating with that population and making it simple, because English might not even be their first language, you're losing out on a lot of backers. All right. Now I want to talk about our last topic for the day, and I think this one is probably the most exciting and maybe a little bit counterintuitive. Everybody talks about video this, video that, mobile, we got to have this, we got to have that. You got to have everything on video. Luke, talk to us a little bit about the reading element, the story, the copy about Kickstarter pages.
And people are right for a lot of reasons. If you look at Facebook conversions and you look at Facebook ads, video kills. There's almost no comparison between like a static image or a video. They just consistently convert better. Then we take that information and we say, okay, now I'm going to put this video on my website and we'll make the whole website convert better. That's usually a gap in logic. We start finding that as people are forced to scan large lists of content, we now have a behavior that is pretty much just we scan everything. So if we give them just the video, like in the context of a Facebook ad, they watch just the video, those will do great. Usually you'll see 30% of people finish a 1.5-minute video. Now, if we send them to a Kickstarter page, here's what we know. about 28% of those words are going to be read. This is according to eye tracking studies just done within the last year. 79% of any user is going to scan the entire page that they come across. Does that matter if it's video content, written content, or photo content? No. They're scanning to find the information they're going to gain something from. They're doing, what's in it for me? What is the price of this product? What am I going to get, for my $100 that's so fantastic? And specifically, how much hassle is it going to be for me to find that? And they make this decision in pretty much a second or two at a glance. So by loading up your page with 2,000, 3,000 words, you're decreasing your conversion because you're telling them this is going to be a massive hassle to get this information. If you post 20 videos, it's going to be a massive hassle to get this information. If you have a page that's 400, 500 images in it, it's also going to be a massive hassle. So my advice to everybody, almost every Kickstarter campaign can benefit from this. And the ones that we've implemented this in, we've seen increasing conversions every time. You need to use plain spoken words. You need to use short sentences. You need to front load that information. So right at the top of the paragraph, right at the beginning of the sentence, it tells them exactly the information they need. No marketing fluff. And then make everything concise, scannable, and objective, and do that in less than 500 words. And I promise you, you'll see conversions go up on your Kickstarter page. People do not read.
Perfect. I think that sums it up beautifully. Thomas, anything else you want to add about page design, reward structure, copy, conversion, before we wrap this one up for the day?
The only thing I was going to add a little bit earlier was when Luke was talking about A/B testing and changing a campaign page while it's live, at the same time, I don't want people to feel, man, look at all this stuff I have to do. Luke is simply saying the big campaigns are often doing that. You don't have to do that to launch a crowdfunding campaign. A campaign can still be simple. I love the phrase, less is more. Don't feel like you have to do this. You might be doing this if you're optimizing it because you have a goal you need to hit in terms of gross pledges because you're looking for retail placements, or maybe your campaign, it doesn't have traction and there's not conversion. So you're looking at testing stuff. But don't feel like it's this huge thing. Like at a minimum, you need a video, you need a good, clean page design that illustrates your value proposition. Because you know these things now, don't let that cause inaction because you feel overwhelmed. That's all I would add.
I think that's the principle of 80-20 in action. What's the 20% of effort that I can do that's going to yield 80% of my results? And I think Luke touched on that quite a bit in his summary. 500 words or less, 2 or 3 GIFs, story and copy that can be put into a sentence or two that conveys the entire message of what you're trying to do. Those are the kind of things that matter. Luke, thanks again so much for being here. I learned a lot. It's great to talk with you. I love the numbers. I love the data. I love the research and the studies that you came prepared with. If somebody wants the white glove treatment, if they want all this done for them, we got to let you do a plug. Tell us a little bit about what that works. I mean, it's not too expensive to have a page designed by Funded Today by any means anyway, right?
No, not at all. And we're happy to help. We've got a team of designers. We've all worked on at least 30 or 40 campaigns this year apiece. I don't think that we've put out a failing campaign in several months now. So we're really excited about that. We crank these out really fast. Happy to take, pretty much any client we can. We love it.
So the process is apply on the Funded Today website. You'll get in touch with a client specialist. They'll walk through pricing, how things will get set up. You might even jump on a call with Luke, and then we'll get started to make your page for you.
Exactly. Jump on a call with me. I would be happy to talk more. And I definitely look forward to anybody who wants to talk more specifically about their campaign. I think we shared a lot about what you can do to avoid an unsuccessful campaign. And the reason that we didn't talk too much about specifically what you should be doing to make a successful campaign is because, as with any design, we have to know what sort of product you have. I can't suggest the same thing for a backpack that I would for a wallet. So yeah, we can definitely help you more in a one-on-one scenario.
Awesome. Well, this was so good. Thanks again, Luke. Loved having you. As we do every single week now, And Luke, we're going to bring you in on this. It is time for the Funded Today Product of the Week. Every week, we pick a new product that we have come across or that we are working with at Funded Today, and we talk about why we like it. For me, this week, I'm really excited. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm doing the triple F. Okay, this is me like practicing what I preach, live action, daily follow up with this client. His name's Kyle Stringham. He's got a product called Pure Trek. If you have ever backpacked, if you have ever gone for a couple days where you can't carry your water in, this is the product for you. They are hiking poles with a built-in filtration system. I don't think I need to say anything more. This is like the perfect minimalistic product that makes it so you don't have to carry all that weight, all that water weight, while having some great hiking poles to improve stability, balance, and posture, while also making it a really awesome, unique invention. Talk about combining innovative with techie and cool, right? He took the traditional hiking pole and he said, how can we integrate a water filtration element to this? That's Pure Trek. They are launching soon. He's practicing everything that we teach, and I'm really excited. I think this one's going to do pretty well. Pure Trek. Purtrek. That's my product of the week. Thomas?
Yeah, my product of the week is called Dorai or Dore. That's spelled Dorai. And actually, before I share what the product is, I have 3 young kids, but my 7-year-old and 4-year-old were taking a bath, probably about 5 days ago. And they filled it up like to the very top. I'm not sure quite how that happened, but they made a mess, right? Water was everywhere. And so our bath mat was soaking wet and took forever to dry. So Dore is a bath mat, and the material causes the water to rapidly dry and expel the moisture. So it keeps your bath mat, free of mold and bacteria. And this is something I'm going to look at getting for myself, actually. So the Dorai bath mat, you should check it out. It's pretty awesome.
The nostalgia is strong this week as we're seeing the relaunch of Gurgling Guts. Fortunately, I can't say that any other way. It just comes out Gurgling Guts. Any 90s babies will immediately recognize the pink, squishy human organs that are immersed in a red fluid and closed in a thin latex ball of film. You squish them with your hand. It has this guttural gurgling and bubbling noises when squished. It's perfect for Halloween, and kids absolutely loved it. Anybody in the 90s can remember going to like Toys R Us and Target and seeing these keychains. And we're so excited to be partnering with the Lewis brothers, the original creators, to relaunch this thing on Kickstarter.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed today's special guest, Mr. Luke Morris, the one and only Director of Page Design at Funded Today. We're going to finalize our presentation piece series on next week's episode. We're going to bring another guest on, this time the Executive Director of Funded Today, Devin Butler. Have you ever wondered how to make the perfect video that also converts? Want to know the best way to tell the story of your product to build your own raving fans? What about the length of a video? What's the ideal length? How long should somebody watch your video? Or does that even matter to know whether it's good or not? These are the questions we're going to get the answers to directly from Devin himself, and you ain't going to want to miss it. We hope to see you next week. And remember, don't wait until tomorrow. Get funded today.
Funded Today is the worldwide leader in rewards-based crowdfunding on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Combined, they have raised over $200 million and counting for thousands of new ideas and inventions worldwide. If you've got an idea for a new product or invention, visit fundedtoday.com to speak with one of their experts.